Hellè. First of all, I love your name.
Thank you.
Second of all, I love you.
I love you.
Thank you. Third of all, I think that you are the shortest amount of time from me meeting someone to them coming on the show.
Really?
In the history of the show.
Well, that is an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel, and it feels so right.
Right. We just knew.
Yeah, we knew.
We locked in.
Yeah. So just to catch folks up, about a month ago, was that why? It was like 1 month ago.
You dropped in my DMs.
Oh, wait. Yes.
Right?
I forgot
you gotta tell
that part.
That story. That's so good.
Wait, I forgot. Can you just remind me? I know that you're on a plane.
We were DMing.
Okay.
I was watching you on the plane leading the M word.
Yeah.
You know, they have Mind Valley on the plane. So I was going through your program and meditating, and I'm like, I'm biohacking my jet lag and I'm going to meditate with Emily the whole flight. And then I send you, I tag you in it. Yeah. And then you message me and you talk about wanting to connect and collaborate. And then I think you said like, oh, after I'm back from Egypt or something. And I was like, I'm going to Egypt. And you were like, wait, I'm going to Egypt too. And then it was like, well, we're actually going together and we didn't know it.
So hilarious.
So
and
good.
Funny that you were on the plane watching my meditation course, tagging me.
Yeah.
And then we end up on the same trip. And I was so delighted. I found out you were facilitating breath work while we were there. But then the moment that I dropped, the moment that was like everything in my body was like ding, 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 pay attention to this woman, pay attention, was we had just spent the entire night in the Great Pyramid in the King's Chamber. And just to give some people some context, we're talking 42 amazing world-class star seed healer angel humans.
It was legendary.
Legendary.
Yeah.
The people who were
a
there.
moment that we'll never forget.
Never. And just singing in many part harmony, toning as each of us laid in the king's sarcophagus inside of the king's chamber there all night long. Thank you, Robert Edward Grant, for organizing this.
Shout out to Robert,
giving us this access. But the next day we were integrating, and each group, picked a leader to sort of share what was the theme from that group. And you were picked as the representative from your group, and you stood up and you said, I'm feeling a bit nervous, so I'm just going to check in for a moment. And you close your eyes and you take a breath, and then some other voice comes out of you, like some other entity, some other energy that did not feel like Hellè. And I was like, what? Who's that? What's that?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Who this? What is going on?
Who this? And everything in my body was like, pay attention, like find out more. And so just for full transparency, after we record this podcast, you very kindly agreed to offer me a session, a channeling session where you're going to invite your guides in or my guides in. I don't know how it's going to work. But like clearly your channel is so pristine, and clearly you've done so much work to be able to activate this, which I want to go into in a moment. But I want to start because I imagine if we go straight there, we might lose some folks. So we're gonna reel it back.
We're gonna just dip our toes in,
and
go a little deeper and a little deeper.
But I'm imagining that breathwork has been a part of how your channel is so pristine. I'm imagining that breathwork has sort of cleaned out a lot of the blockages that would keep you from being able to hear your inner guidance. And that's really what I'm excited to talk about today, is why isn't everyone using breathwork to hear their inner guidance? And so can you give us a window into maybe your first breathwork experience, or like when did you know like, oh, I'm going to dedicate my life to this thing?
Yeah, I still remember the first session that I did. I had been studying different modalities for I think around 7 years when I first found breathwork. So already I was into personal development. I was a life coach. I was doing energy medicine. I actually had already developed my ability to channel. So we can talk about that later on if you want to. I found breathwork through a client of mine. She said to me one day, you have to try breathwork. It's such a game changer. But she didn't go into any more detail. And so I was thinking, oh, okay, well, you know that I'm into meditation and yoga and things like that. So I guess breathing, you think I should do it. Great. And I didn't go any further than that with my pursuit at that time, but it was there. It lodged in the back of my mind somewhere that I should try breathwork. And then fast forward, I was in Bali and I was at this cafe and I saw a little poster on the wall, and it was for a breathwork workshop, and it didn't really have any information. But again, that knowing was there. The seed had been planted. And I said to Lucas, my partner, we have to go. And he was like, I'm not going. He's like,
Nope.
I know how to breathe. I don't need to. I'm tired. I can't be bothered. Like, no.
It's like, I know how to breathe, meaning like we're just going to be in a room breathing, or he had actually done breath work?
No, he'd never done breath work.
Okay.
So he's like, I don't need to pay someone to teach me how to breathe. Thank you very
Got it.
much.
In and out, in through the nose, out through the mouth. I'm all set.
Exactly.
I know how to chew my food. I know how to breathe my air.
And funnily enough, I hear people say this, you know, social media trolls or whatever, every now and then will be like, they do breathing for a living. Like, what a joke.
They
It's so
charge money for people to breathe.
Exactly. So anyway, I had a fire come over me, like a conviction, knowing we have to go to this. Get your ass up. We're going. And so we did. And we were the last ones in the door, and they were like closing it, and we just slipped in there and crept into this workshop, and it blew my mind. They didn't really explain what we were going to do. They just explained we're going to be doing something called conscious connected breathing, and we'll be doing it for about an hour, and you may get emotional, and then let's see what happens. And I was like, okay,
Buckle
completely
up.
naive, didn't know. And 15 minutes into it, my hands were in what we call like T-Rex or tetany. I'm like,
I like calling it T-Rex.
yeah, T-Rex.
Yeah.
I was like, what is happening to me? I was crying. I started to actually experience myself going out of my body, and it was as if I was merging with space, just infinite space, and starting to perceive myself as a person through the eyes of infinite space. Psychedelic.
Woo!
Right?
That's it.
And this is just from breathing.
And you're like 20 minutes into your first session.
Exactly.
Whoa.
So through that perspective shift, which I now know is what we call shifting into a non-ordinary state of consciousness, I was able to see myself from a different vantage point, which also then became like a life review for me. And people talk about this, you know, when you have a near-death experience, that you can go through a life review and things start to flash before your eyes and make complete sense. And that happened to me in this 1 hour breathwork session. And I saw that a lot of the work that I was doing, personal development work, self-improvement, was coming from like a rotten core, is the best way I can put it. It was coming from self-judgment. It was coming from trying to force myself into perfectionism and to become this person that I thought would be lovable.
Oh, that one really, talk about a sword of truth. I'm like, oh, that hurts. I know that so much of my personal development comes from that place. And
Right.
that self-judgment and that desire to be perfect. Whoa.
Painful.
Yeah.
And I wept, and it was honest. It was so uncomfortably honest, and I literally squirmed and was rolling around in my body and feeling so much tightness and tension. And also, I mean, all perfect now, but the facilitator that led that first session that I did didn't mention tetany or the T-Rex hands at all. And so I have this additional layer
paralyzed.
of being like, something is severely wrong with me, which funnily enough had been my inner narrative my whole life. Something is really wrong with me. And so I had my hands up here and I'm like, there we go. This is proof.
Now everyone can see on the outside how I feel on the inside.
Exactly. And so as my awareness was expanding, there was this dual experience going on. I was squirming. I was uncomfortable. I felt like there was something so wrong. I wanted to escape myself. And then I was also aware of vast love and perfection and compassion. Like, oh, look how hard you try. Wow, look at all the ways that you work to become better, and you're doing it from a place of thinking that you're broken, but you also deserve to be celebrated for trying. So it was this multi-layered experience, and I came out of it and I felt so light and so free and so stripped bare of the masks that I had accumulated actually through personal development.
Ooh, the masks you had accumulated through personal development.
Yes.
Okay.
And I, from then on, was like, this is my thing. This is what I want to do, because a lot of the modalities that I'd experienced up until then were people telling me how to think and how to feel, or why things had happened the way they had.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
And the one, I mean, there are a few, but one of the other main modalities that I think is really honest is meditation. Breathwork and meditation are ways that we can meet ourselves exactly as we are, and it's just you and you.
Amen.
And that was the intimacy that I needed to do the work that ultimately I was looking for, and everything else at that point felt like a band-aid. And finally it was like, okay, whoa, we're coming closer to home.
Unless you decide to become a meditation teacher and then you attach your ego to being a great meditation teacher, in which case it can be one hell of a mask as well.
Yeah. You could do that with a breathwork facilitator as well.
Sure.
Let's be fair.
Yeah, that ego is always going to find a way to creep on in.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's why we come back to the stripping practices. But you're right. Like breathwork does have like an alchemical effect, like a stripping away. And so does meditation. You know, it is at least, especially with Ziva, we're de-exciting the nervous system so that we can get rid of the lifetime of accumulated trauma and stress in the body, which does bring you back closer to home. And so when you came out of that session, were you like, this is it, I'm in, sign me up, coach?
Exactly, I was. And I looked over at Lucas. I had mascara running down my face and we were both just bright-eyed and buzzing. It was like a natural high, you know? And we looked at each other and we were like, what was that? And we went and trained a year later. So yeah, it was a defining moment where it felt like I discovered a secret of the universe. And I'm like, how does everyone not know about this?
Like, why isn't everyone doing breath work?
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, we all can breathe.
Yeah.
And no matter what beliefs you have, no matter if you're religious or spiritual or atheist, man, woman, whatever, we can all breathe and we can all access this. And a lot of people are accessing it spontaneously and they don't even know. For example, like the amount of people that I've spoken to since becoming a breathwork facilitator who have spontaneously experienced moments in their life where they're in a highly charged emotional state and they begin to notice that their breathing is changing and it becomes uncontrollable, and it's the nervous system and the body taking over and allowing this deeper level of release to happen. Because we can release at the level of the mind, sure, we can process and we can contemplate why things have happened the way they have, but the body also has its own experience and the body also can hold on and needs to release. And so whether it be that people are having a panic attack and suddenly they've got the T-Rex hands and they're like, what the heck is going on with me? Or they may experience rapid breathing, or they're doing yoga and suddenly their hips are shaking uncontrollably. There's a lot of different ways that I now understand the body is intelligently trying to help us to heal and process and release.
It feels like an important point for people to understand that just because you've gone to therapy or just because you've read the book and you've updated the software, you've updated the operating system through which you are interacting with reality, that doesn't mean that the stress and trauma from when you were 7 or your parents' divorce or the breakup or the car accident isn't lodged in the cellular memory. And so I think that's why meditation and breathwork can be so powerful for bringing you home, because it is helping the body to release that stress and trauma from the past. And breathwork in a very accelerated and accentuated way that can feel quite psychedelic. Meditation is very profound, but sometimes a bit more subtle, a bit more gradual, like more of a daily shedding. So can you just explain a little bit of the mechanics or the science behind why, first of all, what is breathwork? What are you teaching at Awaken, and why is that helping us to get rid of stress lodged in our bodies from the past?
So there are many different types of breathwork and breathing techniques, and the type of breathwork that we primarily teach with Awaken Breathwork, which is a company that my partner Lucas and I founded, for everyone listening.
And it's Awaken with an O.
Yeah, Awaken with an O. We teach a circular breathing method, and that can be in through the nose and out through the mouth, or in and out of the mouth. And the distinction here is that there is no pause between the inhale or the exhale.
That took me a minute to understand. I was like, I don't understand how this is a circle. And I was trying to imagine a circle, but then it's like the circle just means no pause at the top, no pause at the bottom. So it's
exactly
fluid. And
it's a deep, full breath.
Okay.
So we're not trying to isolate the breath in any particular location. We're not doing belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing or chest breathing. We're doing full, deep breaths, allowing each inhale to really expand through the lungs, and then every exhale is emptying out, and then we go straight back in, straight back out.
And I'm just going to invite people to take like 3 breaths as you're listening to Hellè, if you're driving your car, walking your dog.
You just feel a couple of those breaths, and I don't recommend doing this while driving in and out of the mouth.
And I'm not even suggesting they do breath work. I'm just saying, like, take a few breaths with us.
Take a couple of breaths.
Yeah.
Feel the depth of your breath and the connection that it immediately makes available. And that is what we teach. And the techniques that we share range from a 5-minute practice like Awaken Daily, which we recommend people do every day, all the way through to our workshops, which is what you experienced, where we're doing 1 hour to 90 minutes of guided breath work. And when you're going into that territory beyond 5 minutes or so, I really recommend doing it with supervision.
Yeah.
Because it can bring up a lot. In the same way that I think if you're going to experiment with psychedelic therapy, you would want to do it with a guide and someone who understands what can happen, because it can get really intense really quickly. So that's what we do. And within those simple techniques, a lot can happen. It's kind of like if I was to hand someone a little magical tea and be like, okay, well, it's easy for me to hand you a tea, so anyone can do it. What I realized with breathwork is that just because you can do the technique doesn't mean that you can facilitate transformation with those techniques and create a really safe set and setting, which is popular terminology in the psychedelic space, set and setting, to make sure that you have the right support and environment and you feel cozy and safe, and you're in a space where you can facilitate completion of a stress response from activation through to a restorative complete state. And so this is where we get a little bit more into the science. So when we do the activation breathing, which is the breathing in and out of the mouth continuously, we start to activate the sympathetic nervous system. And in our everyday lives, this is not something I would recommend. We want to be breathing in and out of the nose. We want to primarily be operating in that parasympathetic, ventral vagal. We're relaxed, but we're open, we're receptive, we feel curious, engaged, safe, alert, and aware, right? When we start to go into a sympathetic response, we want to do that in a controlled way. And that's where the supervision part comes in, because if we're going to turn up the dial on someone's sensitivity to stresses, especially if someone has a history of trauma. So within the activation, usually what starts to happen first is people will experience changes in their sensations. So in the body, you may start to experience tingling, buzzing, or vibration. And that can start in one area and it can start to move, and it can go through the fingers, it can go through the face and the jaw and the head. And then the sensations can start to build and become quite full on, to the point where people feel like their whole body is vibrating. And from there, in the same way that if we drink, let's say, coffee, and maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes later, you suddenly are like, I feel different. It's the same with breath work. Going into a non-ordinary state of consciousness is not necessarily something that just happens when you start the technique. It eases in. And so after about that 10-minute mark, people typically start to experience more of a curious, imaginative, visual, emotional state shift. And so for some people that can look like spontaneously having memories arise when they're breathing, visions from childhood, recalling a relationship that they were in. And from there, it can begin to bring up emotions. Some people experience more cosmic, psychedelic, sort of out of body spiritual phenomena. And that can range from past life regressions to visiting with guides. Connecting with loved ones who have passed over is extremely common. Usually we have at least a minimum of 30% of the group in our workshops and events that will connect with spirit in some way. And Lucas and I are really passionate about facilitating that because as I touched on earlier, so many modalities only make way for that to happen through an external means. For example, going to visit a psychic. And when I found breathwork and I realized that we could have these extraordinary experiences of connecting to the other side ourselves, and I saw it happening repeatedly with clients, I realized that we have the power within us and there is nothing like a direct experience to facilitate belief, faith, you know?
Well, I would argue that it doesn't need to be faith anymore once you have that direct
right,
experience.
It becomes knowing, doesn't it?
Yeah, like Aubrey says, like, I don't believe in God. I know God. Like, you don't need to even believe in something once you have experienced it viscerally. It's just a knowing. Can you just give us a window into like one of the more like wild or exciting things that have happened at a workshop or something that if you imagine your deathbed slideshow and you're like, whoa, I feel so grateful to have been witness and to have held space for this amount of healing or magic to happen. Like you give us a window of something that might pop up on your deathbed slideshow.
Oh, I love that question. And there's so many.
I know. I'm sure it's
the one pattern that I have been in awe of is the amount of men that I have been able to facilitate breathwork for who after a session have had tears streaming down their face and have described that they haven't been able to cry for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And they accessed grief. They accessed deep love. They accessed emotional honesty and vulnerability in a way that they didn't think they were able to. And that ability to crack open it's so sacred.
It is sacred. Yeah. And what a gift that you give people permission to feel and the tools to feel that is able to override the conditioning and programming of our society, of this patriarchy that is not serving anyone, that is robbing men and women of the ability to tap into their feelings and to go into the underworld, into the inner world. I'll share a quick story on my very first retreat, my first sacred secret retreat. So I was first facilitating like sacred sexuality. First time I had done breath work, and it was like 20 people. And there was a man there. He was 47, straight, white, male, cisgendered firefighter, has never done tantra, never done breath work, had like done my online training, but like that was it. And we get up after about an hour of breath work, and he was like, well, I found my energetic pussy and I liked it. And then I felt what it was like to gestate my unborn daughter. And he's crying tears of gratitude, feeling the profundity of what it was like to be pregnant with his unborn daughter. And I was like, ladies and gentlemen, this is what the crumbling of the patriarchy looks like. It is not about destroying anything. It is about giving people a visceral experience of the profundity of the divine feminine inside of themselves.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, put me in. I mean, similar to you, I was like, this breathwork shit is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, let's go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't make that up. I mean, these experiences, like what you've just described and what I've seen, it comes out of left field. I'll tell you that. There was one actually that blew my mind. Yeah. Again, you just cannot make this shit up.
I'm so excited.
This guy in a workshop, at the end, he had tears streaming down his face and he put his hand up, got the microphone to share. He said he had been medically diagnosed with not being able to produce tears in his tear ducts. And he was crying. I mean,
amen.
medical miracle, or just unlocked that emotional body.
Or just someone was looking for a diagnosis to say like, oh, we've all been emotionally repressed our whole lives.
Right.
Yeah.
To be able to unlock like that, it's such an honor.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's this beautiful experience that I have every time I facilitate for groups where I get to witness as the one with their eyes open, because everyone's breathing with their eyes closed. Mm-hmm. I get to see what's going on throughout the room and being able to see that there's this fine line where someone can be experiencing deep grief and their face can show so much pain, but then within an instant, that pain shifts into ecstasy and joy and love.
Yes.
And to be able to surf that line where they realize all of this pain, all of this heartbreak is just showing me how much I care.
Yes.
It's the best.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that, because this is very germane to the work I'm doing through Sacred Secret, which is like visualize, alchemize, magnetize. Mm-hmm. And in alchemy, like emotional alchemy, I was teaching it like, oh, we're going to go into the grief, we're going to go into the rage, and then we're going to alchemize it with the bliss. Mm-hmm. We're going to transmute it into bliss, as if the grief is somehow less than, or that the sorrow is somehow less than. Right. And then through doing this work and through doing things like breath work and dancing it, I was like, oh no, it's not that at all. You actually find the ecstasy in the expression of the rage. You find the bliss in the celebration and the expression of the sorrow. Mm-hmm. And that was a game changer for me and really highlighted the ways that I bypass everywhere all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, that I'm just always trying to get to a higher vibration frequency instead of honoring what is real.
The
honoring
beauty of
the
it.
Truth.
Yes.
Yeah, the minor chords are just as beautiful as the major chords. Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Likewise.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who's never started before and they're like, I feel nervous, or I don't even know where to start? Like, where would someone begin? Like, heard on, neither one of us is recommending that you do like an hour-long breathwork journey on your own, because that would be akin to taking a cup of ayahuasca with no shaman. Right. It's like not, it's really truly like not.
Dip your toes in first.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the best place to start would be with a daily practice. We have an app where people can experience a 7-day free trial and experience some of our classes, which are between 10 minutes to 20 minutes. There's some half an hour and longer classes in there as well. But dabbling with a shorter practice would be the way to go, I think. And then we have our Awaken Daily practice for free on YouTube. Anyone can find it and start there. I think the other part of this that I would just say is I hear a lot that people are afraid to start breath work, and they see some of the videos that we have online of people releasing emotions and it looks full on, no doubt about it. And I get that. And what's important for people to remember is that we are ultimately the ones that are steering the experience that we have. Yeah. Not just the controlling conscious mind, of course, but it's still you. And the deeper that you can tap into self-trust, the more you'll realize how safe you are and you'll relax into it. And I have seen so many people who, whether it was at large events or even in private sessions, they've said, I don't think I can do this. I think I have to leave. I'm freaking out. I'm shaking. I'm afraid of what might come up. And just by being reminded that usually the things that we're most afraid of, they turn out to be like the boogeyman under the bed scenario.
Totally.
We're so afraid of it because we don't understand it. And we have these bizarre ideas about what's going to happen if we go there. And it's our survival response. It's a primitive part of the brain and body that's just trying to protect us from the unknown. And that's okay. We can have compassion and kindness toward those parts of ourselves that are afraid and still remember and like do a little self-parenting and go, hey, even though you're afraid, it's just you. And anything that you've lived through, anything that you've been through, you're holding it inside. And that is a whole lot worse than allowing it to come up and out. Like, let's rip the Band-Aid. Let's release those things so that they're not weighing us down unnecessarily. I'll tell you that the unpleasant experience of holding on to something far exceeds any level of unpleasant experience that someone will temporarily have by feeling their emotions with breathwork. And this is also where it's important to have an experienced facilitator, because just like with any form of, plant medicine, let's say, or psychedelics, without the right care, we can risk going into re-traumatization and reliving experiences without completing the stress response. And our goal with breathwork and the way that we train our facilitators is to complete the stress response. So we ride that wave or that roller coaster up into the sympathetic activation, but then we know how to bring it back down, and we complete in parasympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And we complete with tools to self-regulate, to ground, to make sense of what's happened, and then to integrate it into daily life.
Amen. Yeah, that feels really important, that these are powerful tools. Even though they are endogenous tools, they are very potent tools. And so it's like honoring both voices, that fear that knows of the profundity of the change, like that ego that does not want to die. Everything wants to grow, including the pain. Mm-hmm. So of course it's going to act out and be like, I can't do this. So like, yes.
Who would I be without that mask?
Yes.
I'll be naked.
Yes. And naked and free and so much happier and so much lighter. And also knowing that this is why set and setting, working with a trained facilitator, is so important, because you're like actively, consciously, consensually like going into your triggers, like giving your body permission and safety to release the stuff that it's been holding. My high school boyfriend wrote me a song and it's called There's More Room on the Outside. Gives you a little window into what I was like in high school. But he was like, girl, let it out. But that image is so beautiful. Like, there's more room out here. Like, it takes so much energy to hold that trauma and those stories and that suffering and that fear inside. Mm-hmm. And that is actually the thing that feels so depleting. And that is something that I wish that I could like viscerally share with people, before going to therapy, before doing the breathwork session, before doing psychedelics, is that it's actually costing you more to hold on to this than it is to release it. So thank you for naming that.
Yeah, and we all believe that our problems are special. I can't tell you how many times I've had the experience of being like, oh yeah, but you don't understand. I'm different. This is what much worse. I'm the exception.
I'm especially fucked up.
Yeah. They're not going to understand. Oh yeah, I can love everyone else, but people can't love me. Yeah. They won't be able to accept that. And these stories became like a prison. And the energy that it costs to hold ourselves together with all of these parts that feel broken and unresolved inside. I just want to say to any listeners right now, with so much love, you will feel so proud of yourself and so much more free if you go toward those areas of your healing that you're afraid of, that feel unlovable and unworthy and unfixable, and entertain the idea that actually that is where an enormous amount of love could be liberated.
Yes. Like that. Okay. So I love this idea. I've recently been thinking about my traumas. Like when I discover a new one, I get excited because it feels like I'm playing a video game, and it's like I've discovered a mushroom and I eat it and I get bigger.
I love
and
that.
I like get more powerful. Because I'm like, oh, this trauma has been sucking my energy from me. It's been sucking my power. It's been sucking my time. And so when I discover it, rather than being like, oh no, I'm so broken, I'm so afraid of this thing, I actually get excited to love it into wholeness, to love it into integration, because I've done it enough times to know how much more powerful that's going to give me back, that I am going to feel more radiant, I am going to feel more free on the other side. And I feel like breathwork is such a powerful, safe, free tool to be able to use that and do
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
I love that. Let's gamify healing our trauma.
do.
Yes. Why not?
Why not?
It's choosing an empowering frame, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
To relate to it. It's really an opportunity for more love, like you said. Everything that's
I think
arising.
you said that, but
Everything that's arising.
So I want to know more though about like your style of breathwork and what you said, like, why isn't everyone using breathwork to connect to their inner guidance? So can you like explain that for us? I know you had already become a channel and already were a guide before you found breathwork, but how does one use breathwork to connect to their inner guidance for people who aren't already channels?
Great question. A lot of the work that we do actually goes beyond healing trauma. So it's great that we've spoken about this and the power of meeting our emotions,
clearing the channel
in the full spectrum. Exactly. So what we are doing is, just like you said, clearing the channel, releasing the obstructions so that we can perceive more clearly, in the same way that if we're driving a car and the windscreen is getting a little foggy and there's some hail and some twigs and things that have built up, we need to clear the screen to be able to perceive clearly. And a lot of people that I work with will say to me, I don't think I'm intuitive, or I don't think I have that gift, but I've always wanted to and I'm curious about it. And what I found is that when we work to clear the negative self-talk, the limiting beliefs, the frozen energy in the body-mind system as a whole, the stream starts to flow. So we're more available and sensitive, and this is a really important point that I want to unpack a little bit more. We're more sensitive to the truth that is ever present and available. So when we have an accumulation of baggage, stories, chatter, in the mind that isn't serving us, it becomes a huge distraction from insight and inspiration and creativity. With breathwork, one of the things that I've seen is that I described, right, how it can crack people open and, grown men start crying for the first time in years. This is a process of sensitizing again. And contrary to much of the narrative out there in the personal development industry that I see, with people being like, just change your state, choose a positive emotion, and all of these things, which they have their place, okay? They have their valid place. But contrary to that, what I have found is that our greatest power is available to us by being not only honest, but resensitizing to feel deeply. And then we can combine and do work to make sure that our emotional sensitivity and our energetic sensitivity is empowering. So we're not wanting to develop emotional sensitivity to dwell in a victim consciousness and be like, I feel so much and I can't leave the house.
Bad. I'm
right.
so raw.
Right. But more so to develop a refined awareness of what's going on. Because at the end of the day, emotions are feedback. So are sensations. So are thought forms. Some of them are just feedback of something that someone said, whether it was 10 years ago or earlier that day. But all of this information is there, and we can work with it in a way that is constructive and not only useful, but extraordinary, divine. So the way I am seeing it right now as I'm explaining this is, we both appreciate Robert Edward Grant's work and his understanding of geometry and patterns that are hidden in plain sight. The feedback that we have available within all of our systems is actually so intricately woven from past to present to future. How we feel now is also giving us feedback as to who we can become. It's showing us so much. I mean, I can't even explain or, in a sentence, how much information is actually available and how divine and specific the patterns are that show up in our life experience once we become more aware. And so the sensitivity combined with the ability to recognize patterns then becomes like a supercharged gift to navigate the world as what people throw around and call like a conscious being, right? We become more conscious.
Like Neo in the Matrix, like you can see the bullet coming and you can anticipate it and move out of it. Say like you're dancing with nature versus like, oh, I didn't even notice.
Exactly.
And you get hit in the face.
That's something that I've always really found fascinating about Buddhist teachings and meditation. I was always really drawn to this idea that we can become so masterful over our own vessels that we can start to tap into things that are usually outside of conscious awareness. And we know that the breath is governed by the autonomic nervous system, but we can also go in there with our conscious awareness, right? And start to change the breath. But what about being able to go even deeper into understanding the sensations that are showing up in the body that we identify as sadness? And is that even sadness? Or is that just a sensation that we've called sadness? That's old, that wants to be processed, acknowledged, felt, released, or moved, or whatever it may be. So this expanded awareness gives us a whole lot more choice as to how we navigate reality. There's
that beautiful saying. It's like on your career as a meditator, you start by saying like, I am sad. And then as a few years in, you're like, I am feeling sadness. And then it's, oh, I'm having a heavy sensation inside of my chest. Where it's like, verse you're identifying with, like, I am the frequency of sadness. Yes. I will always be sadness. And then it's like, oh, I'm currently feeling some sadness, but I am not it. It is not me. And then once you've really started to identify with all that is, then we can really start to tune into that sensation of, oh, it's actually just heaviness. And maybe it's my mom's. Maybe it's not mine. Maybe it's old. And can I love that? Can I integrate that? Can I express that? Can I give it the microphone? And so this is all so beautiful, but can you give us like a real life grounded example of someone, a student, a friend that has started to use breathwork and then started to be able to hear their own inner guidance?
I could think of countless examples of people who have come out of an experience of breathwork and said that they have realized that a stuck feeling that they've had for a really long time was actually emotional feedback that they weren't in alignment in their life. And they've come out of that experience having processed through the emotion, and it's like a light bulb moment where they've realized, oh wow, this fatigue that I've had, this heavy sensation, this feeling like I get up every day and I just dread my day, is actually my spirit trying to redirect me. And my own body has been a reflection of how out of alignment I feel. And then by making subtle or larger shifts, it depends on the person. I've seen it all. That feeling starts to transform. And I've seen people change careers. I've seen people within a week or a month of doing the work with us move to a different city. I've seen people manifest buying homes out of nowhere, finding the love of their life, all kinds of things. At the end of the day, I think the practicality is so important, and that's why we do all of this. It's not just for entertainment. It works. When you see clearly and you understand how you feel and why you feel it and where it's guiding you, you're more empowered to live your life as the video game master player that you are.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So beautifully said. So I'd like to transition a bit into this idea of, so we've talked about inner guidance and how breathwork can clear the channel to tune us into our own inner guidance, to get curious about why that fatigue was there, why that pain was there. And rather than thinking like, why is this happening to me? Like it could actually be happening for me if we're able to change our perspective and look at things from a different POV that breathwork or meditation might provide. So once we have a connection to the inner guidance, how do we turn that volume up? Because I mean, many people listening to this might have been meditating for years. They might already I call it following charm. Like it's like there's only one rule at Ziva, and is that you have to follow charm. And that's like really being able to detect what is that still divine guidance, and then listening to that. That's our only rule. It's like, no, not a dogma, not a doctrine, but that's just the one rule. That and
That's
meditate.
a great rule.
Thanks. And I am not, I could be better at it. And this is something that has been a prayer of mine for a while, of like, you know, please use me. Like, you've given me so many gifts. Like, how would you love to use me? And actively wanting to connect more deeply with my guides, to have more of an intimate relationship with them. And I know that this is something that is, that you've either done a lot of work on or are naturally gifted at, perhaps both. But I don't even know if my question is, how does one turn up we'll start there. How does one turn up the volume on that inner guidance or connect to their guides to start? And then we can go into your journey and what it's like for you.
I love this question. Great. So good.
Maybe I'll ask for me. How can I? Because I think that's sometimes more practical, actually.
Yeah.
Right? Of like, where am I now? Where am I looking to go? What's available? So like, yeah, I'll use myself as a guinea pig. How would I go about strengthening my connection with my own inner guidance and or external guides? And I'm going to use external in air quotes because, you know, it's all really just us.
Right. True. Good point. Okay, I'm going to start with a simple framework that anyone can use to understand their own unique intuitive abilities and ways of strengthening what's naturally there. And then we'll talk about you and what you notice. Mm-hmm. And then we can talk about more of the nuances. So as a starting point, I think it's helpful to know about what is called the clairs. So we have different languages or channels, if you like, of accessing information that we could say is from God, source, the universe, guides, spirit, our higher selves.
And you're saying the clairs.
The clairs,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So some of the listeners may know of clairvoyance, clairaudience. Often psychics are known as clairvoyants, or yeah, that's usually what people call them. But actually many psychics are clairaudient. And so clairvoyance is the ability to see with your subtle eye, your subtle sight. So maybe it's that you see with your mind's eye. You may have a sense that there are images popping up in your mind. And when you are receiving an intuitive impression, sometimes I call it tuning in. When you're tuning in, you receive images. That would be clairvoyant. Some people experience clairaudience, which is an auditory feedback loop, right? Where we're hearing. The thing that I think some people get confused with is they're like, I can't see spirits with my eyes, or I can't see auras, or I can't hear anything, because they're focusing on their physical sense rather than the subtle sense. So what I'm saying with clairaudience is it could be a thought stream. It could be a vibration. It could be a rattling feeling. Sometimes I'm clairaudient. Sometimes I get the feeling of a vibration in one of my ears, and it's almost like a truck or a train that's racing past, and suddenly it vibrates. And I know every time that happens, that spirit is trying to communicate with me, and I need to pay attention.
Wow.
So it's like, hey, it's kind of like a shake on the shoulder.
That's so nice that you have such a specific hello, a specific high five from God.
Yeah.
I did a MDMA and psilocybin journey once with a therapist, and my only prayer going in was, hey God, like I would love to know, like beyond a shadow of a doubt, like when it's you. Like, you know, people are like, oh, when I see this, I know it's my mom, and I just wanted to know, like, when I was getting high fives from nature, and it was very clear that it was butterflies. And then afterwards, I mean, I won't bore you with the butterfly story, but it was like very, very clear.
Wow.
Yeah. That like when I see butterflies, it was just like, oh, pay attention. Mm-hmm.
That's a really great point, actually, because with our subtle senses, it can also start to interact with the environment as well. And that's where it gets really fun. So you can have clairvoyance and that ability to see with your subtle sight. And then you can also ask for signs. And they may show up as numbers or animal totems or words or people. sometimes people will hear songs. That's another form of, our subtle hearing. I get that a lot, where lyrics communicate with me in different songs, and it's
like you'll hear a
wild.
song on the radio that's answering.
Exactly.
That was actually one of the things. So the butterfly came through. I was in the middle of a divorce, and I was driving over the Emily Bridge, which is the Brooklyn Bridge. A lot of people don't know it's called the Emily Bridge because it was a couple who built it. And anyway, and my ex-husband and I walked across it on our first date, and I was driving across it, basically like going in to meet my coach to prepare for the divorce, to end the marriage. And a butterfly flies across the windshield. This is days after I've done the journey. And then I look on the radio, and as I go onto the Brooklyn Bridge, the song is by Iron Butterfly. It's just like, okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Pay attention.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we've got clairvoyance,
those are two.
clairaudience.
Exactly. And then we have clairsentience, which is a subtle sense of feeling. And so sometimes people will say, oh, I just have a feeling in my gut, or I feel really I feel excited in my chest, or it feels off. The vibes are off, or the vibe's really good. So if we are feelers, then that will be the primary way that we can pay attention to the language of our intuition. And as you touched on, you were like, it's so great that you have that specific understanding. This happens through practice and through connecting the dots. This is the pattern recognition that I'm talking about. You go, oh, that's my sensitivity. There it is. It's working for me. It's giving me feedback. And now every time I get that, I know what that means, and I know how to navigate life more effectively because of that information. And then there is claircognizance, which is knowing. And this is often with clients that I work with, the one that they have the hardest time with, because there is no image, there is no message that is being spoken from some external source. It's like, I don't know why, I just know. You have to trust it. It's a valid form of intuition.
I think that's the one I have. I mean, I don't know if you can have just one or if it changes or whatever.
It can be multiple.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard you say, you said, how do I know that it's God? Like, God, I want you to show me so that I know for sure. And it sometimes comes out in our language, right? Unknowingly, we are already speaking about it. So pay attention to that, and then start to take note every time you have an intuitive hit come through, and see it manifest into something that validates that you were spot on. So I encourage people to maybe get a journal and write down any times that you've had a feeling, a knowing, a vision, a message, and what happened, and how did you know what you knew? How did it come through? And this is how we build up an archive of evidence. So when people say, oh, I don't know if it's my intuition or my thoughts, this is how you begin to differentiate through practice.
Yeah, because that feels valid. Of like, the fear is sometimes, especially like we want to be right, we want to feel safe, we're triggered, like that fear voice will get loud and creative and tricky.
Right.
And so it can be really hard to distinguish.
And within every one of us, even if we have gifts, we also are human, and we have our own obstructions that get in the way of the foggy filters. And I get it. Everyone that I know gets it. And so we do also have to practice discernment with our own intuition and be like, am I clear? Am I coming from my conditioning? And a practice that I really like to work with is releasing agendas. So if you have a strong agenda, it's very difficult to get a clear read from your intuition, because you're trying to control what comes. It's like the classic one. You pull oracle cards and you're like, yeah, I don't like that one. Let's get another one. So you've got to release agendas. And if you can't, then you probably would be better off to get someone else to tune in on your behalf who doesn't have any attachment. That's the best way.
Mm-hmm. And then I would say even then we're still running it through our own discernment, right?
Absolutely.
Like especially then we're running it through our own discernment.
Yes.
And that's its own level of mastery, right? Because like the wildest ideas were like, it didn't make any sense at the time and we just did it and we sold our house and we started the company and then sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Yes.
And so it's like it can be scary and tricky and it does require a level of mastery. Mm-hmm. And I love this as a starting place of looking backwards.
Yeah.
Right? Looking backwards. When did I have the hit? How did it feel like? Did I hear it? Did I see it? How did it manifest in the 3D? That feels like a really strong practice that we could all do.
And we don't want to throw out our logic in the process. I'm so all for integrating logic and intuition and being practical in the application of these downloads and insights that we get. And sometimes, you hear like, shall we just throw it all and, quit our jobs and go all in on this thing? And when you have people in your life who care about you and are open, they're the best people to talk these things through with. I think sometimes we ask the wrong people for advice, right? And that could be too far in the kind of floaty, ungrounded, just do what feels good. If it feels exciting now, then go for it. And then later on, it turns into a hangover where they're like, why did I do that? That was the worst idea. I did not think that through. So we want to go to the friends that are not over there that way. And they're not the ones that are like, sounds ridiculous, sounds crazy. I don't know. I wouldn't do it. What if the worst possible scenario happens?
Projecting their fear on you.
Exactly. Find, if you can, the people who are open-minded and have a little magic in their mindset. Yeah. And then talk through the steps.
Yeah, because oftentimes you talking it through, you'll find your own disbelief. You'll find your own answer even in just voicing it. You're like, oh, I just answered my own question.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so why isn't everyone doing breathwork to connect with their inner guidance?
That's such a good question.
Thank you.
When I found breathwork, I was asking myself the same thing, and I had a knowing, an intuition that would change. And that I was going to be a part of that change. And I guess the best answer that I can offer is that things come and go in cycles, and we live in a patriarchal society right now where a lot of things that are really good for us, that are really natural, aren't considered credible or acceptable. And that's changing. Yeah. And I'm really glad to be alive at this time where breathwork is becoming pretty popular. It's becoming a lot more well known. Yeah. And like meditation, yoga, these things, I think even over the last 20 or 30 years, the popularity, the normalcy of them, it has surged. It's so breathwork is like right there.
It does feel like that. It feels like it's about to be the thing where it's like yoga or like exercise. And certainly like in our circles, I would say most of my friends do some sort of meditation, some sort of exercise, and now increasingly some sort of breath work almost daily.
Exactly. And shout out to Wim Hof, because I think he made such a big difference in getting
and Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes,
on giving him the platform. I mean, he already had a platform, but she really amplified it as well through hers.
And being able to appeal to the masses.
Which is just a freaking miracle, because like that man, like God bless him. Right. But the fact that like kooky Wim Hof
eccentric
is like has somehow like branded breathing.
He's heroic.
His name has become a verb on breathing. I'm like, this, I don't know what marketing book, like I hope someone is teaching about Wim Hof in marketing class in college, because it is wild what has happened. And it's to your point of like, it was time to come through.
It was time. And I think people love the novelty of him, his story.
And the audacity of him.
Exactly. And then because of the biohacking movement as well, you know, with Dave Asprey and all of these different people that are contributing, we're connecting all the right dots for it to emerge and for people to take it in. It's like, oh, I've heard of biohacking. Oh, I want to be able to hold my breath for longer. Oh, I want to be able to be tough with all my friends and do ice baths, or I want to like do a cacao ceremony and be more connected to my emotions and hang out with my friends in a wellness setting. So all of these things start to become more socially acceptable and then aspirational. And I think it's a good thing. I know some people are like, oh, I don't like it that spirituality and wellness is trending, and it's not a trend, it's a serious, intimate thing. And yes, and I think it's beautiful that it's becoming popular, because this is how we create global change. And I know that you're right there with me. We're on the mission, aren't we?
We're on the mission. Yeah, when I started teaching meditation, it was like 13, 14 years ago, and it was still weird. Like you Google NYC meditation, and there was just some like Buddhist like monasteries. It was like monks. You
must have been like the youngest person, I imagine.
I was pretty young. I was maybe 20, 30, I don't know, maybe 31 or something.
Mm-hmm. And it's surrounded by older people.
Yep.
And they're like, what are you doing here? Yeah. That was me as well.
And I remember my ex-husband would not introduce me at dinner parties as a meditation teacher because it was too weird. Like it was like too far out there. And then like 3 years later, it changed so quickly. It was like in the year that I came out with Ziva Online, Headspace came out, Oprah Chopra came out. Like, so it was like, again, it was in the field, it wanted to come through. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of years later, he wouldn't introduce me as a meditation teacher at dinner parties because he knew he would never see me again, because people would just be asking me questions all night long. So it was so amazing how quickly that transformation happened. And now people who are under 40 don't even know that meditation was ever weird. Mm-hmm. It's like, and they don't even know a time before there were meditation apps. So it's like, I used to be the accessible one, and my classes were like $1,300 for a weekend, and I was the accessible one, and now it's like, oh, a free app on your phone. Yeah. And so it's been so cool to see how much and how quickly things are changing. And I very much believe that we heal in community, right? So like, of course, it has to be trendy. It has to go into society if anything is going to stick. Because if you're just going and doing a breathwork retreat by yourself for 7 days, and then no one in your community talks about it, understands it, can relate to it, or ever asks you about it again, it's very easy for that to just be a one-off life experience.
Exactly.
But if your friends are getting together and doing ice baths and breathwork every Sunday, and song
and your
circles,
favorite celebrities doing it.
Yeah. And you're seeing it, everyone posting about their ice baths and breathwork on Instagram. It's like, oh, we keep reminding each other, right? We keep walking each other home.
Exactly.
Okay. So I noticed in Egypt, so I will say that my experience in Egypt was wild. I even though I just said I don't feel like I have a deep relationship with my guides, I'd say the closest that I have come is through Isis. Isis, the Egyptian goddess of fertility, motherhood, sex magic. I have never felt closer to divinity itself than through her. My relationship with her feels very intimate and very close. And I remember our friend Aubrey was doing a ceremony with me once, and he was doing body work, and he said that he felt Isis come in, and then my body turned into, he said that my body, I weigh like 140 pounds. He said, your body turned into about 18 pounds. Like your bones went hollow as if you had like bird bones, and Isis is represented with the wings. So that was wild, but also felt like a very unique situation.
So specific,
specific, and something I might not be able to replicate on a Tuesday. And then, so being in Egypt,
space, she's flying into a living room near you.
I mean, I'm here for it. But in Egypt, for me, it was very much a pilgrimage and such a gift, because so many people, everyone on that trip was there to celebrate the sanctity of it in their own unique way. Yeah. Like no one was there to just like drink a bunch of wine or like just party. Like everyone was there on a bit of a spiritual pilgrimage. And for me, it felt very much like one of gratitude. Like I just want to, even though we didn't go to the Isis temple, just to go to that land and just be in deep reverence and gratitude felt like such a gift and an opportunity. Now, while we're there, my whole idea of what is possible and my relationship with other species got blown wide open, and I'm still processing it. It still feels very new, but it feels exciting that I'm 44 years old and like my entire frame of reality as I know it got blown open. And that was largely in relationship to, we still in 2024 don't understand how or why those pyramids got built. We do not today have the technology to build the tunnels that would have gotten the 50-ton pieces of granite into these tunnels. People would have had cement in their lungs within 20 minutes. There are no machines that can lift these things. We still don't have the ability to build it. If we were to say, hey, we're going to build another one tomorrow, we don't know how.
Yep.
And so there's a great mystery there. and there was lots of different hypotheses, and we had mathematicians and, I don't know what you call a decoder. What would you call Alan?
Cryptographers.
Yeah. Multiple cryptographers, people who remember all of their lifetimes all the way back to Atlantis. And so there was it was cool to be in so many different ideas, but what seemed to be the collective agreement was that these structures were built potentially by non-human technology, non-Earth human technology. And, the person we mentioned earlier, Robert Edward Grant, has discovered markings in the King's Chamber, which is historically and famously blank. Like no one has ever seen anything there. And he's now discovered 27 different subtle imprints, not hieroglyphics as we're used to seeing them, but subtle imprints. And so the hypothesis, or the now I would say my working theory, is that these were imprints from non-human intelligence, and what seemed to be happening inside of the King's Chamber is some sort of a puzzle, some sort of a code or a clue to give us humans a remembering or a map to someone or to something. Would you agree with that? What is your take on that?
I would agree with that. I feel that the pyramids are multiple technologies operating simultaneously. So there is the mapping, there is the power generation technology that they exist as. I also experienced it, honestly, as a Stargate portal, multidimensional church.
Whoa.
And so much more.
A multidimensional church. Can you say more about that? What does that mean?
So that really came through for me on the night that we spent in the King's Chamber.
Yeah.
I heard Robert speak about it in a YouTube video, that it was like he went to heaven. And it felt very much like we were in a gathering of multidimensional beings. Of course, there's our physical bodies that were there in that space. And there's who we think we are and who we exist as humans. And then another dimension of that is also who we are as starseeds.
What is a starseed?
A starseed, in my perspective and understanding, is someone who incarnates into this dimension with their celestial incarnation seeded, or the information of another lifetime, to simplify this for the listeners, the information of another lifetime, a more advanced lifetime, seeded in them, so that when they start to awaken, when they start to activate memories, understandings, gifts, however it unfolds from individual to individual, that they will be able to offer something to humanity that we're advancing toward. If we look at time as being, and again, Robert talks about this, I love it, that we all have such similar understandings of things. If we look at time as being circular or like a kind of loop, I'm sure we all know of the shape of like an infinity symbol, where we're experiencing echoes of the past in the present and also in our future. So where we're going may resemble the past, but it's like a subtly shifted version of the past, or a more obvious variation of it. But there are spiraling echoes again and again and again. And this is why we say things like, oh, it's history repeating, because history does repeat. So when we have a civilization that has advanced already beyond what we understand that we're capable of as human beings, which I believe the Egyptians and those who were a part of Kim and other advanced civilizations were, they were far, far more aware than we are now. So if we have those beings back then, I personally believe that they were intelligent enough and advanced enough to know, let's say, if a cataclysm was coming. They knew. and they prepared accordingly. And I believe that some of those civilizations left Earth or went into the Earth. And take it all with a grain of salt, fam. This is my feelings on it. But I believe that a part of that is we are not alone in the universe.
And just to put this into some context, anyone who's ever done, like at the Museum of Natural History, there's like a video where you start, like you see it in the movies sometimes, like someone's yard, and then it plans out to like the city and then the state and then the country, and you can see the whole globe and then the solar system and then the galaxy and the clusters of galaxies and then the universe and then the multiple universes. Like the amount of arrogance that it would take to think that we are alone inside of the billions of galaxies and stars is so wild and incomprehensible. Like it would be scientifically impossible for us to be alone.
Exactly. That's my perspective as well. So it's a humbling perspective, I think, to go, wow, okay, who are we to think that we're the pinnacle, right?
Humans. That's very human.
And so if there are these other civilizations that exist off our world, then chances are pretty high that they also have understandings of how to interact with us. And I personally have my theories that humans and Earth is like a kind of quarantined species, and that the best way to advance a civilization without invading it and creating wars is to infiltrate it from the inside. And so I believe that that's what starseeds are doing. And I identify myself as a starseed. I'm not running around being like, hi, everyone, I'm Hellè and I'm a starseed. It's not something I talk about very often. But if we want to be real, I do believe that I have come here along with many others. I don't know if you feel this way too. I suspect that you do. To shift it from the inside out. And what a great idea. Every time I connect with my guides and they explain more and more of this to me, I think, of course you would do that. Because they're not in a hurry. See, we exist within time-space reality, right? So we're like, oh, well, hurry up already. Humans need to awaken. We need to heal the planet and all of these things. When you perceive time from a different vantage point, you relate to the process differently. And I feel like we're living a great story. And the story includes all of the drama, all of the ups and downs, all of the moments of being like, we got to change this. We got to transform it and heal it from the inside. And they're hanging back and seeding new DNA and information so that we can, adopt it, absorb it, share it, disseminate it, and gradually evolve.
That felt like a theme that came up quite a bit, both with Robert and with Zach Bush, of like the 12-strand DNA and activating the 12-strand DNA. That there's quote unquote like dormant DNA, what scientists have been called junk DNA, which I've never heard of anything more absurd in my entire life. That like something as complex and divine as DNA would be like, yeah, we just made a mistake. There's like some junk in there. Like what?
Yeah.
So that for me feels like a absolute, there's not junk DNA. There might be inactive or dormant, but I know that Robert and Zach are both working to help us to activate the full 12 strands. And who even knows, there might be more than 12. But is that what you're talking about when you mean like up-leveling the DNA so that there can be an ascension?
Yeah, exactly. And I believe personally that, I don't know that much about the science of DNA at that level like they probably do. But what I do believe is that we have the information encoded within us energetically already of these other civilizations. So when we talk about being a starseed, whether it's, some people might be aware of star races like the Pleiadians or the Arcturians or the Andromedans.
Why do you think they have such good PR? Like, why those races and none of, I'm sure there's many others, but what is it about the Pleiadians and the Arcturians that they seem to be more known?
Well, that might just be to you.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I personally don't have much interaction with the Pleiadians.
Okay.
So they're not at the forefront for me.
Okay.
And I'm sure other people have other experiences, but I do think that there is something to the level of involvement or investment that they have in Project Earth. Yeah.
Project Earth. I love that. So I'm quite sure like many people listening to this are freaked the F out. Many other people are like, it's waking up something that they kind of knew already and they're excited to learn more. And probably other people just aren't even hearing it because they're, their dog is barking or something.
Right.
And we're going to trust that is exactly perfect. But let's say someone is listening and they're curious and they're like, this sounds like something I want to know, but they're feeling a little skeptical. Like, is there a time in your life where you felt skeptical of this and something that helped you to feel like that you could like trust this, or you could lean in, or that inspired curiosity in you?
Yeah, I think to be completely real and honest about this, in 2012, when I first experienced contact with the Arcturians, it came through meditation, and I bilocated. I went out of my body and I met with the Arcturians. I was
not on Earth.
No. I was so scared of what people would think that I didn't talk about it for years. And I really feel for anyone.
How old were you at this time?
21.
Okay.
No, sorry. I was 22 actually. 22. Okay. Just turned 22.
So I don't know how old you are now, but like you were talking years. Like,
yeah, I'm 33.
Okay. So about a decade.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Over a decade now. I want to say this because I think sometimes for me, I get skeptical when I think that people are doing, I don't know, portraying some sort of performative spirituality, or like I can channel, or I'm a psychic medium.
Right, we've been sold it as like
a party
snake oil.
trick or some sort of novelty. And I just want to open up vulnerably to say some of the people that you see out there who are speaking about these things have had to do a lot of work to have the courage to even acknowledge it publicly.
Yeah.
It has not been easy for me to talk about this stuff. There has been so much fear of criticism and rejection, and even questioning my own mind and being like, am I going crazy? Like, what is going on? Because after that initial contact experience, it didn't stop. I've had daily interactions with different civilizations since 2012, and my life has completely changed since then. Like within weeks of me opening up my ability to channel, we left New Zealand where we were. We sold all of our things, Lucas and I, and we went to India. And from there, we haven't lived LA is the first place that we've actually lived. So for over 10 years, I traveled and was basically like a spiritual kind of pilgrim on my own mission, not knowing where it was leading, not know why I was doing it, but I would get information and they'd say, go to India, now go to Nepal, now go to Switzerland, now go to this other place. And I would just go and follow the clues, and life would unfold miraculously. And so I've learned to trust it. And
it specifically felt like Arcturian guidance?
Mostly Arcturian guidance. However, that has changed in the last few years. Now I would say my primary guides are Lyran.
What's that?
They're feline beings, and I feel them around you a lot, and I did in Egypt as well. And they have a very strong connection to Isis and Sekhmet and the feminine priestess lines that were in Egypt, which was a huge part of my experience of being there.
Really? Yeah, that's interesting, because in the journey with Aubrey as well, like he said that the cats came in very strong.
Yeah.
And speaking of the like past, present, and future of that like ancient future, I could feel there was like 5 or 6 souls that I know. I could feel us all in the pyramids in the past, and I could also feel us in the pyramids in the future.
Wow.
And Vailana was there as well. So then to be in the pyramids with Vailana, and then we all did something at Burning Man in a pyramid. And so it was cool to see. It was like the past in an altered version of the present, and then happening again in the future. And so the pyramid structures feel very much, the pyramids, Isis, and cat energy are very, very strong.
Exactly. And so to go full circle, because we went in all kinds of directions just then, back to your question about the spiritual church and what I meant by that.
Thanks.
The echoes.
You said interdimensional church.
Yes, exactly. Interdimensional, multidimensional
church.
There's a feeling of familiarity that I believe is a potent sign of our own awakening, where the divine is speaking to us and it feels so familiar. And we're like, I've been here before, or I know you, or I've got deja vu right now. And that familiarity is like the bleed through across time and space and beyond it. And when I said that it was a multidimensional church, what I sensed that night in the King's Chamber was that we had done this a lot and we will do it again. And it was like worlds colliding and realms colliding in one concentrated space where there was so much light and so much energy, and a lot of that we can't process with our eyes and ears, but we were receiving it at the exact right level that we needed, and it will continue to integrate more and more. And in the same way that every one of those stones, we were so blessed to be able to hear some lectures from locals and Egyptologists about how they said they would call a battery a stone in Egypt. And I
like the language for the word they would use to mean battery was stone.
Exactly. And those stones are like condensed, like power-packed storage units of energy and information. And so when we say stones, we mean like 50-ton giant pieces of granite that when you stand next to it, your legs start vibrating, stone cold sober. And the ceilings above them were lined. They're not anymore, but they were lined, according to Billy Carson anyway, and also Muhammad, our guide, with electrum, which is a very specific combination of gold and silver, which is a very powerful conductor. Exactly. And so bringing in the toning the way that we did, the choir, all of these traditions, again, they're echoes, the bells in churches. There's ancient technology that I believe has carried on through time, but maybe the original purpose or function of it has been lost or distorted a bit along the way. And as a result, it's like, when a painting is a little crooked and you're like, not quite right. Like it just needs to go a little bit like that. I think of these things in the same way, where we have access to the information, we have access to the multidimensional beings and temples and churches, but we just haven't fully figured out yet how to work with it. And that's where our sensitivity and our intuition and the clarity of our vessel comes in. We're preparing for it.
Feels exciting. Yes. It feels so exciting. So if you would be so kind, I would be so deeply honored and humbled if you feel safe enough, if it feels time, if it feels in alignment, to invite your guides, to invite your channel, to open your channel.
Absolutely.
And then I guess because this feels new for me, like would it be best if I ask questions? Would it be better if I sit in deep presence? Like how would be the most beautiful way and elegant way for this to come through for you?
Okay. So when I channel, I don't know who's going to come through.
Okay.
Because I channel multiple different beings, and sometimes I will meet someone for the first time and I'm like, oh, hello. Okay. This is new. So what I will do is just close my eyes and start to tune into what is presenting itself.
Okay.
And from there, I'll be able to let you know, and I'll begin to speak, and then there'll come a silent moment where you can ask questions.
Okay. And it's okay to ask questions for myself, for the collective, for listeners.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
And how long do we have?
We're good on time.
You just guide it, okay?
We're good on time. And so yes, I guess when it's time to wrap, I'll just say thank you so much, and we will start to close.
Great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, I'm excited.
Me too.
Let's go. So for everyone at home, I would just encourage you to close down your eyes and get comfortable. Bring your focus to your breathing. And as you breathe, you can begin to scan your energy on that inhale and exhale up and down your spine, reminding yourself that you are safe, you are protected, you are guided, and you are loved. We are here. We come to you with a message now to support you in the understanding of what you have been experiencing throughout this conversation. Many topics have been woven together that are still making sense to you, including some that bring about more questions than others. We will focus at this point in beginning to open your understanding to the role of other civilizations in your earthly experience and why we would be interested in the lives that you are currently going through and where we are leading to with you, not for you, but with you. This must be emphasized. When we say that we are leading, we lead from a vantage point of having more information because we have increased sensitivity and therefore increased awareness, scope of witnessing. We do not rely on the physical senses such as the eyes or the ears to be able to perceive. Our sensitivity has gone beyond your understanding of the senses, beyond even your understanding of the subtle senses that have been introduced in this conversation. Our understanding of you is more focused at the level of geometry. Some would call Source the great creator. And we would say that our role is to observe the creation and to guide the creative process toward beauty. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and this is why Source creates itself in mirror reflections with variation that allow for a new observer to be introduced. Beauty then becomes subjective. Our observation of you and your evolution toward beauty is why we guide you and contribute, for you are a part of the art that we have the joy of witnessing. Understand that in your human experience, most of you are very oriented toward self. Your life is your art. Your life is your beauty. Well, we will say that there are other civilizations who are less focused on the self or the personal life as a canvas and are more interested in supporting life itself to proliferate and be directed in varying forms of expression. Our art is to guide the expression of humanity in one respect, although our art is not isolated only to your kind. From our vantage point, we see increasing beauty, and we bring this to your attention today, for we understand that many of you who are tuning in are concerned with what you see in your lives and in the species. You see what you perceive as ugly and concerning, fearful, worrisome, and wrong. We see refinement. We see evolution. It is important that you understand this because it enables more relaxation to be introduced into the individuals present in this conversation, which also introduces more beauty into the collective. Understand that we are painting now. We are laying down strokes in the collective consciousness now through this very conversation. The more that you perceive beauty in yourself, in others, in life itself, the more you become an extension of the brush that we stroke across your species. You become an extension of the observer of this beauty, contributing to the proliferation of it. And why is that important? Well, we would challenge you to say that you know why. You have within every one of you a primal desire for more beauty and love. And yet maybe you have not put those words to it before. And yet this is why, ironically, you suffer. Because you are trying to find beauty when you are being suggested in spoken and unspoken ways that what you find is something other than that. You are already encoded with enough information to desire joy and be determined enough to take action to seek it out. That is the very reason why you would even listen to a conversation such as this. We acknowledge that many in your collective are not this way inclined. And that is a part of the depth of the art that is being made. The dimension of it. Those who do not perceive beauty are not wrong. Many of you grapple with this, wanting to unify, but not understanding that unification does not mean replication of the same. Unification can occur in an understanding of the rightness of every shade and every stroke and every line, curved or straight, in this place or that. And so one of the assignments that we would offer to each of you to take away from this conversation, though there have been many we understand, is to find more beauty in the reality of you. Not who you think you should be. Not the you on your good days that you think are your good days. You. Seek and you shall find it. Being the witness to your own beauty sets you free to enjoy not only yourself but others. Can you zoom out every now and then to appreciate the canvas and all of its strokes? The intelligence moving from drama to drama, from blessing to blessing. All of it is moving, vibrating in symphony. The more you relax into your role as an observer of beauty, the more you will be moved. And you have wondered to yourself, how can I be more intuitive? How can I be more guided? by relaxing into the beauty that you are and seeing the artistry of this life. For when all is said and done and you close the book or you turn the lights on or the curtain draws, you will know. But why wait? Why wait when you can perceive the artistry that is occurring so much sooner? Do you have a question?
Yes. First, may I ask who I am speaking with? Or what I am speaking with?
You are speaking with a fractal or an expression of Metatron.
Thank you. How can we perceive beauty inside things that we think are not, like war or greed or the perceived dying of the planet? How can we find beauty in that without bypassing or feeling the human emotions of grief or sorrow at the pain that happens from the things that we think are not beautiful?
The only way for you to do this is to distinguish that you are in identifying beauty. You are not celebrating a singular act, but pain may illuminate and invoke love, and it may motivate a commitment toward love. Now, we are not saying that bad things happen to motivate good things. But there is a reality upon your planet at this stage where contrast creates the song that is being sung. It creates the symphony. It creates the texture of what is unfolding here. Now, it is difficult for your minds to grasp how something so unpleasant could be so perfect. And you fear what you do not understand. And this is why so much information is kept from you.
How can we become less fearful of that which we do not understand?
By learning to relax. The more that you can relax, the more information will be opened up to you. And the more that information is opened up to you, the more the power dynamics of your planet begin to shift. For the awareness of the masses will eventually overthrow the dictators. And the more sensitive you are, the more aware you are, the more connected you are in conversation with one another, the more unity begins to activate. And once again, it must be emphasized that unity is not a singular replicated expression. Unity is only found upon your planet in recognizing the roles that have been assigned to you. Each are unique. And the more safe and relaxed you feel, the more you will get on with becoming the note in the song that allows it to sound ever more beautiful. At this stage, upon your planet, you identify much that feels off or out of tune, unpleasant, unnecessary, unhelpful, destructive, scary, violent, and so on. There is a repressed expression that has been occurring for many, many thousands of years upon your planet that has led to destructive outpourings of what would otherwise be purpose. And this is what you now find as the patriarchy. Purpose, the masculine intelligence moving through individuals and groups. Purpose with confines begins to distort. And so what you find now is the result of thousands of years of distortions building upon each other to create unhealthy expressions, which are desires of power. It is those who would otherwise be purposeful in a way that would be more in harmony with the greater song of your species, not knowing how to conduct the energy of the self. And so, like a kinked hose, it becomes distorted and controlling. And again, in the same way that we could describe a kinked hose, there will be outbursts of energy, expressions of energy that are more weak and subtle, and then those that are overdeveloped and going in inappropriate directions. And this is exactly what occurs when you leave a species for thousands of years and you bring in other races that have specific agendas for the species, and you introduce control structures which inhibit the natural flow of energy toward evolution and beauty, and gradually it becomes more and more distorted. So we will give you this image like a tightly wound, kinked up hose. Humanity has gone in a direction because of repetitive constriction led by external forces. And you are now in an unwinding of that constriction, of that hose, to allow energy to move where it naturally wants to move to contribute to beauty. But understand that the unwinding process is going to include outbursts, cyclic waves of excess in moments. And this is because, as has been spoken about, with time, future, past being connected, in order to exit out of something that you have entered into and invested in so deeply, you are withdrawing out of it, backtracking out of it, having to witness and feel it. You are in the detox, if you like, of what has been built up around you, through you. And as you exit out of it, it will feel painful, and then you will feel free.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your wisdom with us. Is there anything else that you would have us know before we start to conclude the conversation?
We will say that while Metatron has been acknowledged as a primary facing communicator, there are many beings that are present in this moment that wish you well. And we encourage you to be curious, simultaneously adopting a childlike curiosity and wonder with the protection of the parent. Allowing yourself to navigate toward that which feels safe and beautiful to you. And trust that if you are in the vicinity of something that does not feel in support of who you are to be in that moment, that you are blessed to walk away and to remove yourself in order to sing your song elsewhere. For you do not need to manage or meddle in every stroke. And the most efficient use of your time and energy is, as Emily would say, to follow your charm. So do that joyfully. There is so much beauty, including in how you care for those who you witness disconnected from beauty. So instead of forgetting the beauty that you have access to and taking it for granted, and instead of going into guilt for the beauty that you have, spread and proliferate beauty in your own mind, in your own life, in your own interactions, and in your contributions to the world. And if you have a prayer that you pray to a higher source, to that which governs all, we invite you to include beauty in your prayer.
Amen. Thank you so much for your time, for trusting us, for trusting me, for trusting this community. It feels like an honor to make contact, and I look forward to integrating and digesting this even more deeply. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Wow.
There we go.
Wow.
How are you feeling?
I feel in awe. I feel curious. I feel inspired. I feel a sense of wonder. I feel grateful. I feel grateful to you. I want to celebrate you. I don't know if that felt brave or scary at all for you. And I feel in such deep gratitude to have had that direct contact and communication. It feels quite rare for me so far. And it felt deeply wise and deeply true. And like the idea of spreading beauty feels like yes. Because
such a great reminder.
Digesting and proliferating suffering and pain, thinking that we're helping someone else's suffering and pain only creates more suffering and pain.
Exactly.
But can we spread beauty even within all of it? Especially in the face of all of the suffering and all of the pain. Wow. How did that feel for you? What was that experience like for you?
It always feels vulnerable. It feels vulnerable because it requires such deep presence to do that. And literally word for word, I don't know what's coming. So I'm aware when I'm channeling, but I'm also having to really radically commit to getting out of the way and allowing that transmission to just come and being like, okay, it's almost like, leaning off a ledge and you're like, I'm just going to trust what comes, and hopefully it's going to,
because like you're not directing the language.
Exactly. And because it's word by word and they choose such specific words, it just requires really, really deep presence for me. But I learned so much. And I think this has been a really critical part of opening myself up to actually trust the channeling, is how much I learn. Like when I am now taking that away as a student and being like, okay, that's my work now, to really practice remembering the beauty in all things. And I had no idea that's what was going to come through. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Wow.
Getting schooled on that.
Yeah. It's amazing. I imagine you must get, like, anytime you channel, it's like a new transmission, a new lesson,
Completely.
And have you ever considered writing a book about your travels and being guided? Are you writing a book?
I have written a book.
Okay.
I haven't published it yet. It's currently being edited.
Okay.
But yeah, that.
Do you have a publisher?
No.
Do you want one?
Maybe.
Okay. Well, let's put that prayer out. I'm happy to introduce you to mine.
Thank you.
But it feels like it's time. It feels like right on schedule.
Yeah.
I think that people are ready, and increasingly more so, of like hearing this journey of the way you were guided around the planet and the different beings that come through and the lessons within. And I mean, I know we've already written it, but like to see both perspectives, like Hellè's perspective and to have the guidance of whoever is coming through, feels really like such a gift to the species right now.
Thank you for saying that. And yeah, for a long time, I grappled with, are they ready? Is it too weird? Is it too much? And I really value being a bridge and being a relatable, safe space for people. And that was actually a part of my reason for going to Egypt, was to work on the internal judgments, the internalized patriarchy, the voice of the father that's like, you need to go and listen to the science, and that's not credible, and if you can't prove it, then it's not real. And to come back home to this ancient future knowing, and that came through connecting with my ancestors in Egypt, who were, it's like such a strong lineage of oracles and priestesses and seers and individuals who were so connected to nature. And really coming home into that level of connection to my ancestors actually helped me to realize the world needs this, and especially the West is really like starving for it, I think. Yeah. I mean, channels, priestesses, seers, this is considered normal in many cultures. It's celebrated, it's valued, it's an essential part of the society functioning. Yeah. And even in the channeling, just then, how they said that unity occurs by, I'm paraphrasing here, but unity occurring through us all really stepping into our own roles and embracing what we're here to be. Yeah. Like we need me to be me and you to be you.
Yes.
And I finally feel like I've surrendered to that, and here I am and I'm doing it, and I feel like, the stove is getting turned up, and there's going to be a lot more coming through from here. A lot more coming through your channel. Great. I want to celebrate that. I want to fan that flame. I want to help protect it, and so that you feel safe. And I know that that's not my job, but just anything I can do externally to help to buttress this, because it does feel really important and so pristine and so pure. So thank you for sharing your gifts with us. Thank you for sharing Hellè's wisdom with us. Thank you for sharing about breathwork with us and how it can be a tool to connect us with our own inner guidance. I am quite sure that people are going to be fascinated. They're going to want to work with you. We covered a lot of terrain. We really did. Wow. So where should we send people? Where can people go to if they want to connect deeper with you and awaken? Yeah, you can find all of the breathwork techniques, classes, all of that good stuff at owaken.com, OWAKEN.com. And then you can find me, Hellè, HELLE, Weston, WESTON.com, or Hellè Weston on Instagram. And you have an app as well, yeah? We have an Awaken app. Yep, you can find that in the App Store.
Okay, great.
Yay.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Emily. I love you.
I love you too so much, and even more so now.
We're just getting started.
We are just getting started. Look out, world. Sweet friends, if you have enjoyed this episode as much as I have, if you are in such a state of awe and wonder as I am, my request would be that if there's someone in your life that you feel like would benefit from this conversation, which I know is very intense and a very specific flavor, but if there's someone in your life that you think would find comfort, would find safety, would find beauty in this conversation, then let's spread it. Let's spread this beauty far and wide. So if you want to leave a 5-star rating, a review, if you want to screenshot it and tag us, I'm at Ziva Meditation and you're at
Owaken Breathwork.
Owaken Breathwork on Instagram. We always love hearing and seeing how the conversation has impacted you. So I know there's so many good nuggets and juicy wisdom that you can take from this conversation. So thank you for being on this ride, and we will see you next week for Why Isn't Everyone Doing This? I love you, and I'll see you next week.